Hi guys, this is Dr. Rhodes. I wanted us to still go over a little bit of food photography information since we didn't have class last week. Please be ready to have your assignment, which I will talk about here at the end. First thing I wanted you to think about was the angle of your food. Don't just go above the food. Actually look at the same, playing view. Go at different angles. We've practiced angles. Try something different when you're playing with food. And also really play with your depth of field. As you saw in the last one and even in this one, you really want your food to be focused and the background to just be there as eye-appealing extra information. Lighting becomes extremely important when it comes to food photography, and the more natural light you can do, the more natural the food is going to look and the more appealing. Appealing is one of our most important things. We really want the food to look good. Part of that is looking at the context of the shot. Do you want it to have props? Do you want them to be on plates? Do you want silverware? Do you want bowls? What kind of napkins around? You really want to think of things that are going to add contrast to the food to make it stand out, but you don't want to do anything that's going to cause to not be the focus of your shot. You really don't want to take away from the image, but you also really want to be sure that it's going to make it stand out. Part of making it stand out can also be doing repetition. Notice how we've got both cupcakes in here, adding to the way you see the shot. The food looks tempting, we see multiple pieces of it, but our depth of field is very shallow. Here's another example of how repeating an element, one can draw you through the photo, but it also can really add to the temptation of the food. Also really notice the background and how it helped. Now one thing that becomes really important with food photography is styling it. How do you want the food to look? My best advice is to find a cookbook. Look at other ways that similar food has been plated and photographed. Many different tricks that people will do with composition. For example, if you notice on this plate, the food is sitting on a piece of paper to add more depth to it. You really want to consider that contrast, that composition. How are you going to make that food really pop? One way we do this is depending on what kind of food you're going to use. A lot of times if you're going to do photography of things like ice cream, you only have a certain amount of time to get the shot in before it starts melting, starts looking not as appealing as you would expect. Great example of this is, the pictures of the McDonald's hamburger looks a lot better than the actual McDonald's hamburger, right? Well, some of that is it's just sitting around, and probably a little bit of, making them better. One of the things some photographers will do, they'll use fake food. They'll use glue instead of milk, several different other tactics. But it's always great if you can use real food because, one, it's going to photograph much better, and two, you're going to get to eat it, right? So, a lot of times it can just depend on what you're shooting and if you can get enough time to do the fast, healthy food, or real food, rather than using a fake. It's a couple things that photographers will do, such as putting oil or water on vegetables and things that are going to have water droplets, just to help them keep that water droplet, also to help keep shine on the image. We're trying to make this look appealing. A lot of times you'll see food with smoke coming out. It can be real hard to keep that smoke coming as you're doing your shot. So some photographers will actually put matches or lighters or things behind the food to where you can't see it, but you see the smoke. So there's a couple different but the best technique of all is digging into the food, taking a bite. Not only do you get to celebrate your hard work so far, you also get to make your shot that much more interesting by adding more texture, adding more depth, and showing that it's yummy food. Here's some examples of some other shots to think about using some of the things that we've just discussed. If you notice the top left, we've got that repetition, we've got that contrast, and we're really focused in on what makes that food look good. If you notice the top right, the food looks great, the green pops, We're at that level, but notice how the red sort of blends into the red plate. Obviously not the focus of the shot, but your prop really needs to become part of your composition. If you notice with the cupcakes at the bottom, look at the contrast of that blue versus all of those varieties of colors. Also, how unique. They're showing muffins, but they're showing them using repetition, using a line that draws you through, in a unique setting that makes them really pop. If you look at the soup over on the right, bottom right, that white against that red table, the red food. Here are two other shots that really show repetition and contrast. I want you to notice the bottom left, or sorry, bottom right. Notice that the lighting is terrible. The depth of field is interesting, the repetition is interesting, the makeup is interesting, but lighting can become extremely important. And that's why I also wanted us to think about white balance today. Your camera has white balance settings that you can use that can really help make that interesting, pull some of that natural or artificial light out when you're taking a shot of food or a shot of anything. If you notice the two hamburgers here on this shot, obviously the one on the right, white balance is perfect, the white looks crisp, it looks great, but notice the one on the left. The one on the left looks warmer, more inviting, makes you want to eat it. So sometimes white balance, we can use it to make sure our shots and our colors are sharp and look good, and sometimes we can use it as a way to make our art look a little bit different, make our food look a little more appealing. I want you to play with your white balance settings on your camera. There's a couple different ones that everybody has, and these are what they tend to be. You're going to have an auto white balance option where the camera is setting all of the white balance for you, and that's probably what it's set on if you haven't started playing with these. After that, you sort of get the little icons, which can really help you decide which white balance is going to be best to start with and to see if is right. Obviously, we have the daylight, which looks like a sun. We have cloudy, which looks like clouds. Shade, tungsten, fluorescent, flash, or even a custom white balance. Now, a lot of times as amateur photographers, we're like, okay, we're out on a sunny day, so let me switch it to the sun. Or I'm inside and, I don't know, it's tungsten or fluorescent, but I'm going to pick one of those. I want to challenge you to really think about what the camera is doing when you set it to one of these settings. A lot of times when we're in daylight, when we're in cloudy areas, when we're in shade, we really need a lot more warmer tones brought into the color wheel. It could be it's very blue out, it could be because the clouds are gone, we don't have the sun. So what the camera will do on these things is it's going to bring in warm tones. And depending on which one of those, the daylight, the cloudy, the shade that you pick, is how many warmer tones it's going to give you. If you think about tungsten, this is an instance when your photo comes in and is really, and you need to get some cooler colors in there to tone the heat down on the image. A lot of you had some issues with blowing out in the background. This is a way you could add some blues, some warm or cool colors to balance that warm heat that you're getting from the sun. Fluorescent also adds warmth to your photo. Think about what you need. Look at the color of the shot that you got. Look at the whites. Does it need more heat? Does it need more cool? What I want you to do is use it as art. Don't just say I'm in a daylight photo and so I'm going to use this setting. Go ahead and experiment. You can use shade on a daylight shot. You could use tungsten on a cloudy day. Play with those things. Take a test shot and really look at what you need or could to really make the food stand out or the image stand out, and your colors, the tones that you want. Like I said, the pictures of the hamburgers, while the one on the right is the right tone of white, the one on the left adds a little bit more warmth, adds a little bit more of that yummy factor. And when we're doing food photography especially, The yummy factor is the most important thing. So what I really want you guys to do this week, we will have some food in class on Friday and we will practice some shots, but I would love for you to go ahead with your camera this week, find your favorite food, and take some shots of it. Think about the composition. Think about the props, the plating. Are you going to have it on napkins? How are you going to show that food and convince me that your favorite food should be my favorite food based on your photo? Make it look that appealing to me. I want you to try and take a couple photos of this object, and I want you to send me via email 2 of your images of this subject. Tell me why you chose these. Tell me how you set it up, why you chose the background, the depth of field that you did to make your food look the best it could be. This is a fun type of shooting. I want you to have fun with it. And like I said, Friday we'll practice with some food that I've got. We'll also do a little eating. So I will see you then.